Hello everybody, my name is Oliver and welcome to That Green Breeze Garage. And today we're going to be reviewing my mom's 2017 Subaru Legacy.
Down below is a CVT transmission, and up front is a 2.5 4-liter boxer engine.
So I am really excited to be driving this car because, first of all, this is the first new car I'm driving. Yes, you heard me correctly. This is a 2017, and I'm used to driving 90s Plymouths and 90s Dodges and stuff like that. So driving a modern Japanese car is a little different for me. So this is actually going to be a very unique and interesting video. So let's get into today's video.
So let's talk about the 2.5 4-liter boxer engine under the hood. It makes about 175 horsepower, which I was surprised by. I thought this thing would make more horsepower. I thought this would at least be in the 200s, but it isn't, surprisingly. It is 175 horsepower, which is fine. It isn't that groundbreaking, but to be fair, this is an economy car, and it does that job really well. So this engine isn't fast, or even really fun. But what it is fuel efficient. We average about 29 miles a gallon in the city and 30 on the highway, which is really good for being a full-size sedan. Now, we have to talk about the transmission. It is a CVT transmission, meaning continuously variable transmission. Now, CVTs have been used in snowmobiles since the late 70s, but in the 2000s, a lot of car manufacturers started to experiment with CVTs. Saturn was experimenting with CVTs, as well as Nissan was experimenting with CVTs, and Subaru was also starting to do it as well. Now, a lot of people don't like CVTs, including myself, because CVTs just tend to not be the most reliable transmissions in the world for cars. They usually work with snowmobiles and four-wheelers and stuff like that, but for cars, they just tend to not have good transmissions. Like Nissan were horrible with their CVTs, they're just always going out. Now, luckily, this one hasn't given us pretty much any issues, except it was slipping not that long ago, but luckily we were able to get that fixed, and now it's shifting just fine. But at the end of the day, I'm just not a fan of CVT transmissions. I don't like how they feel, I don't like just anything about them, I don't like the reliability, and overall, I don't like it, period. But this one has been reliable for us, and I think Subaru has had a better track record for CVTs.
So now, let's talk about the interior. So up front, we have two physical gauges and a screen. Off to the left, we have our tachometer.
And then in the middle, we have our information screen, which shows us our miles, if the parking brake is on, if the door is open, and our average MPG, and other things like that. And then off to the right, we have our speedometer and fuel gauge.
On the steering wheel, it's a pretty typical Subaru steering wheel. It is leather wrapped, which is pretty nice. We do have our phone options as well as radio controls. We also have cruise control. We also do have paddle shifters right here, which is pretty nice. So as I'll talk about, you can shift this manually. On the door, we have power mirrors, power locks, power windows, and a window lock. Off to the far left, we have a climate control vent, and then in the middle, we have two climate control vents as well as our hazard switch, and then we have our touchscreen infotainment center. So this does have AM, FM, it has Bluetooth, and it has USB and aux input. This does not have navigation, though, which is just a thing to know, so you're going to have to use your phone if you want to use navigation.
And then we also have our climate controls. So we have dual zone climate control, which is really nice. It is an R134A system, because, of course, it's a modern car. And the AC in this thing blows ice cold, even though it did go out once, which I'll talk about later.
Down here, we have a 12-volt outlet as well as our aux and USB input. Now, speaking of those USB ports, let's do a phone charging test. So we have our cell phone right here with a USB charger, and let's see if it'll plug in. So I am very happy to report that this thing does pass the phone charging test. But wait, let's keep going. We also have another test that we like to perform on this channel called the cup holder test. Now, unfortunately, I forgot to bring my restaurant-style Pepsi cup, so this Toy Story 5 water bottle is just gonna have to do. So let's put it in there. Obviously, it passes. But these cup holders are pretty tiny, so it isn't going to fit much, but it does fit this bottle. So if you have these little tiny cups, it will pass. As well as just a little storage space, which is pretty nice. You can actually shut this, which is pretty cool. So if you want something that you want to hide, you could put those things there. And then we have our shifter that, as I said, controls that CVT transmission. It looks like a shifter. There's nothing really much I have to say about that. It is a leather wrapped shifter. But yeah, nothing real much to say about that. And then we have our e-brake. It is a electronically controlled e-brake, which I really don't like. I wish that this was a physical handbrake. Like, that's the thing I will always like about 90s cars, is that the fact that they have physical handbrakes.
And then we have our center console, which has actually quite a bit of storage in it. Now we gotta talk about the seats. So when we first bought this car back in 2019, I thought to myself, okay, this car is gonna be a little uncomfortable. No, these seats are actually really comfortable. I don't know what it is about them, but they feel very 90s to me. Like, they're very squishy, they're very bouncy. The fabric itself is a little scratchy, but other than that, the seats are actually very, very comfortable, and I actually really enjoy them. They are heated, which is really nice, so they're very nice in the wintertime. And overall, I just really like these seats. I actually find them very comfortable, and I've gone on road trips in this thing, and I've never felt uncomfortable in this thing, which is awesome.
But let's hop into the back seat and do a backseat review. Okay, so we're in the back seat of the 2017 Subaru Legacy, and here's the thing I want to talk about. So Subarus, in my opinion, have never really had good back seats. My grandpa has a 1988 Subaru Loyale station wagon. Terrible back seats. Even my mom's boyfriend's 2010 Subaru WRX doesn't have the greatest back seats. It's not that the seats are necessarily uncomfortable, but just the legroom is bad. And headroom is pretty bad too. But I'm very happy to report that this actually has a pretty good back seat. Now, being a sedan, I would hope that it would have pretty good back seats, and I'm very happy to report that it does. Now, the seats are a little hard. It is the same fabric in the front, but it's not as squishy as the front seats. But this car is really good at doing something, and that is hauling people around. This car hauled me all throughout my childhood, and I never really felt that uncomfortable. This car has always been a very comfortable car, space-wise and seat-wise. So overall, this back seat's actually a pretty good back seat. But let's hop out and take a look at the trunk. Okay, so we're at the trunk of the 2017 Subaru Legacy. Open it up like that. And as you can see, we do have our paddle boards and stuff in here, and like an inflatable mattress and stuff like that. But overall, this thing has actually a pretty big trunk. Now, the thing I was going to talk about is I'm so used to driving my Plymouth Breeze that has a gigantic trunk because it has very thin body panels because it doesn't have that much crash safety. But this car has a lot of crash safety because it's a modern car. It has very thick body panels, but yet it still has this absolutely gigantic trunk in here, which is really awesome. But now, the moment that you've been waiting for, we have our backpack, and we're gonna do a trunk test. So let's put it in here. Now, as you can see, this doesn't really count because we have paddle boards back here and other things. So there isn't too much space for the backpack in here because the trunk is full now. But if this were to have paddle boards out, we would have a ton of space in here, which is awesome.
And now we gotta talk about the looks. This looks like a car. What? That's it. That's all I have to say. Okay, jokes aside, it looks presentable, it looks nice, it's a pretty good looking car. I've always liked it, and that's really all I have to say about it.
And now we gotta talk about my final thoughts. So, I genuinely think this Subaru Legacy, this from 2017, is actually a pretty good little car. As I said, this car has over 260,000 miles on it. We've owned it since 2019. This car has been through hell and back. This car hasn't had any issues. As I said, the CVT has slipped a little bit, and the AC did go out, but other than that, this car has been a fantastic car. And even though this thing isn't my style, I definitely think that if I were to buy a new car, it would be this. And well, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Huge thanks for my mother for letting me review her 2017 Subaru Legacy. Like the video, comment on the video, share the video, and well, I will see you all next time.